Greetings, everyone, and welcome to Histories of Hymns, Stories of Songs, Episode 11. Today we're going to look at a contemporary classic, Awesome God, written by Rich Mullins. I actually have a vivid memory of the first time I heard Awesome God, growing up in Norotan Presbyterian Church in Darien, Connecticut. I was middle school aged, likely around 11 or 12 years old, and one of the high school seniors in a green choir robe led a procession of the choir by singing the chorus of Awesome God, a cappella, by himself. Now, I did not start singing until my sophomore year in high school, so I was still in the singing isn't cool and manly phase of my life. But I remember being enthralled by not only the God-given talent of this young man's voice, singing the praise of our awesome Creator, but the courage it took to do it all alone, with no other singers and no instruments. While it would still be a few more years before I started singing, I can certainly remember starting to think at that point that maybe there was something courageous and manly about singing our Lord's praises. Speaking of a courageous man who sang God's praises, let's look at the composer of Awesome God, Rich Mullins. Rich was born in Richmond, Indiana, on October 21st, 1955. He grew up in a Quaker home and was baptized when he was in the 3rd grade. He was taught piano and 4-part harmony at an early age by his great-grandmother, and he continued studying the piano throughout his childhood. Mullins first became inspired to be a musician by the appearance of the Beatles on The Ed Sullivan Show in 1964. It showed him how music could really be a big influence on the culture. After graduating high school in 1974 and enrolling at Cincinnati Bible College, he performed in a band called Zion, writing all the songs for their first and only album. During his college days, Mullins was also the youth pastor and music director at the United Methodist Church in Erlanger, Kentucky, part of the Cincinnati metropolitan area. He performed some during this time as well, but he really only considered it a hobby until 1978, when he brought a group of teens from his church to the Ichthus Music Festival in Wilmore, Kentucky. It was there that he was once again reminded of the effect of music on people, especially young people, and that influenced him to pursue a music career full-time. Famous Christian recording artist Amy Grant took notice of Mullins' songwriting prowess, and in 1981 she recorded his song Sing Your Praise to the Lord, which became an instant hit on Christian radio. This prompted Rich to move 45 minutes outside of Nashville to Bellsburg, Tennessee, to begin his professional recording career. His first 2 albums didn't sell particularly well, but his 3rd album, Winds of Heaven, Stuff of Earth, contained the song Awesome God, which he wrote on the way to Rock Lake Christian Assembly, a Christian camp in Vestaburg, Michigan. The funny thing about Awesome God, from Mullins' perspective, is that he felt it was one of the worst written songs he ever wrote. But, reflecting on the success of the song, he goes on to say, "I think a great songwriter is someone who is able to take a very meaningful piece of wisdom, or of folly, or whatever, and say it in a way that is most likely to make people respond. But what you want them to respond to is not how cleverly you did that. What you want them to respond to is your message." So, even though Mullins felt that Awesome God was poorly crafted, perhaps its simplicity and form allowed its powerful message to resonate. Rich's songs were often inspired by personal, real-life events. He was engaged to be married and wrote the song Doubly Good to You for his upcoming wedding, but his fiancée broke off their engagement in 1982, and that inspired the song Damascus Road. 5 years later, Mullins traveled to South Korea and taught conversational English at a seminary there. He then spent a brief amount of time in Thailand, near the Chinese border, as a missionary, teaching trades and providing medical care to Chinese refugees. In 1988, Rich moved to Wichita, Kansas, and a few years later went back to school, earning a Bachelor of Arts in Music Education from Friends University in 1995. During his time in Wichita, he continued to write and record music. On a pair of his albums, entitled The World as Best as I Remember It Volumes 1 and 2, Rich collaborated with David Beaker Strasser. Beaker's big hit, Step by Step, appeared on Volume 2. In 1993, Rich assembled a group of Nashville musicians, including Beaker, into what could be referred to as a Christian supergroup called the Ragamuffin Band. Their concept album, A Liturgy, a Legacy, and a Ragamuffin Band, would later be named the number 3 best Christian album of all time by CCM magazine. After graduation, Rich and his fellow classmate and friend, Mitch McVicker, decided on a change of scenery, and they moved to a Navajo reservation in Bonito, New Mexico, and taught music to the native schoolchildren there. It was definitely a strange move for a successful recording artist, and led many to question why he would make such a move, especially when you know that he lived in a tiny sheet metal trailer on the reservation. Mullins dispelled any idea of receiving a divine call to minister to the Navajo Nation with his own brand of self-deprecating humor, saying, God never spoke to me and said, go to New Mexico. That's why I think it's so ridiculous when people say, it's so noble that you're going to New Mexico. It's no different than when someone says, I'm going to flip burgers in Pittsburgh. Much of Mullins' way of life seemed strange and even made others in the Christian music industry a bit uncomfortable. He often looked unkempt, with long, untamed hair and several days' stubble.
Who's scruffy looking?
He never worried about saying what he felt people wanted to hear, instead saying what he really thought. One example came in response to a quote from Grammy winner Ashley Cleveland, who at one point toured with Rich Mullins. On his seeming self-exile, she said, I don't know if it's because other things capture his interest or he's afraid of success. I wish he'd care more about his career because here's one person who could reach a lot of people with his sharing of the gospel. Rich's response to this was, I don't know if I'm afraid of success. I might be. I tend to think success is overrated, that it's something everybody goes after until they get it, then nobody knows what to do with it. Your life speaks louder than your music. I can make records for the rest of my life and talk about love, but it won't mean anything until I love somebody. Rich looked up to St. Francis of Assisi, taking a similar vow of poverty. He even co-wrote a musical with Mitch McVicker about St. Francis's life, transplanting the saint into the Old West. He always saw his success in the music industry as just a way to pay the bills, and instead of using the profits from his tours and album sales to live comfortably, he entrusted those profits to his church, only taking the average salary for a laborer in the U.S. for that year. The rest went to charities such as Compassion International. He took to heart Jesus' words in his parable of the sheep and the goats in Matthew 25. Whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers of mine, you did for me. Even his musical skills were a bit unusual. Although he did most of his composing and performing using piano and acoustic guitar, he also displayed exceptional skill on somewhat obscure instruments, such as the hammered and lap dulcimers and the Irish tin whistle. On September 19, 1997, Mullins and McVicker were traveling to a benefit concert back in Wichita when they lost control of the Jeep they were driving. Unfortunately, neither of them were wearing seatbelts, and they were both ejected from the vehicle. McVicker sustained serious injuries but survived. However, a semi-trailer truck that was traveling behind them swerved to miss the overturned Jeep, and sadly ran over Mullins, killing him instantly. In 1998, several of Mullins' Christian music peers released a tribute album for him entitled Awesome God, a Tribute to Rich Mullins, with their own interpretations of their favorites of his songs. And on April 29, 2014, Rich Mullins was inducted into the Gospel Music Hall of Fame in recognition of his influence on Christian music.
Our God is an awesome God. When he rolls up his sleeves, he ain't just putting on the Ritz. Our God is an awesome God. There is thunder in his footsteps and lightning in his fists. Our God is an awesome God. The Lord wasn't joking when he kicked him out of Eden. It wasn't for no reason that he shed his blood. His return is very close, and so you'd better be believing that our God is an awesome God. Our God is an awesome God. He reigns from heaven above with wisdom and power. Our God is an awesome God. Our God is an awesome God. He reigns from heaven above with wisdom and power. Our God is an awesome God. When the sky was starless in the void of the night, our God is an awesome God. He spoke into the darkness and created the light. Our God is an awesome God. Judgment and wrath he poured out on Sodom. Mercy and grace he gave us at the cross. I hope that we have not too quickly forgotten that our God is an awesome God. Our God is an awesome God. He reigns from heaven above with wisdom and power. Our God is an awesome God. Our God is an awesome God. He reigns from heaven above with wisdom, power, and love. Our God is an awesome God. Our God is an awesome God. Our God is an awesome God.
Thank you so much for watching and listening. If you liked this video, please give it a like or a comment. If there is a hymn or a song that you would like featured in a future video, please let me know in the comments below. And thank you again. God bless.